So we out here getting some cabbage because we about to ferment. And Lev and I was talking about, like, we were at a conventional grocery store and he was like, you know, we could just get cabbage from here. I could just take off the outer layers. And I was like, nah, I'm not comfortable with that because pesticides, Natasha, Natasha,
I was being ignorant, okay? I be ignorant sometimes.
I don't know if they can see.
Slipped up.
But, you know, talking about how pesticides actually affect your body like antibiotics, and that's crazy. You know, that's really not good for the gut flora. So we're gonna talk about that more in this video, but we got us some cabbage. Arm's not long enough.
A voice calling from within our core.
What are we here for? We realize that our power lies
in how we live our lives
and how we choose to show up.
So we choose to show up as rooted crowns, and this is our living prayer. Birth from the earth,
on a path to reclaim our name,
nature, ancestral medicine to heal our home. We sow this prayer in our bodies between many hands and upon our land.
In direct response to self-hate, forced scarcity, and climate change.
But it's simple for real. We plant food forests and concrete jungles,
inspiring youth to lead us out this struggle,
nourishing our bodies as living proof,
sharing all we do to amplify this truth.
Yeah, we documenting it all,
bringing it to you so you can feel this call in person, online.
Yeah, we standing tall, rooted crowns, let's rock with it, y'all.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to our Rooted Crowns channel. This is your first time here. My name is Ife.
I'm Lev.
And we're Rooted Crowns. And today, we're making a video about something that I mentioned in the last video, which is a process that you find throughout a lot of different traditional indigenous cultures. And that process is called lacto-fermentation. So before we had refrigerators and all this electricity, people lacto-fermented their food because it helped to preserve their food. And in addition to that, it has all these other benefits that we'll get into. But just to kind of reference what people were talking about, we're talking about the fermented grains that you find all throughout Africa. We're talking about the fermented cabbage with like the bread, seasonings, the spices and ginger and stuff that you find in Korea called kimchi. In Africa, what's it called? Or what's one of the injera, you know, from Ethiopia.
Or banku.
Or banku.
Banku, which is like a fermented fufu, or like a mashed grain.
That's in West
starch.
Africa, Nigeria.
Yeah, West Africa is, you know, Nigeria, Ghana. It's like really fermented, and the reason why they ferment those grains is not only does it make it easier to digest the starch in the grain, it cleanses the liver as it goes down, and you know, adds to the digestion and preservation of those foods.
Yeah, and so we also have the sauerkraut in Europe, which is what we're working on right now, and we have the cornmeal, fermented cornmeal of North American people. We have the chutneys and the lassis of India. So there's fermented foods all over the world in traditional cultures.
Like the earliest types of beer, and if you go around the world,
even
you
root
see
beer.
Yeah, I mean honestly, you know, ginger beer, when it's originally fermented. You know, you go around to South America, you'll see corn beer. You know, chicha. If you go to Africa, you'll see millet beer. You'll see
and all
honey wine. You'll see, you know, so many different fermented beverages.
Yeah, and so all of these are
kombucha.
You know, just a process that you do to preserve food. But like Lev was hitting at, there's all these different benefits to it as well, because lacto-fermentation, it's talking about lactic acid, and that's supposedly on everything, on all skin, on all vegetables and fruit. But it pretty much, when you activate it, which is activated through fermentation, it kills off putrefying bacteria.
It starts smelling like a
sauerkraut
already. Yeah.
So it kills off bacteria. And what's amazing about that is that's how it preserves it, because it's killing all the things that would break it down and make it go bad. So I guess we could just start putting these in mason jars. So we're working, like we said, we're working on coleslaw, and we also have been working on pickles for a while. And if you're interested in these specific recipes, you can go to our Patreon page, our patreon.com/rootedcrowns, and you'll see exactly how we're making it. But we're not going to really go into how we make it here. We're just going to kind of talk about the value of lacto-fermentation while we continue the process of making it. Yeah, so you have this lactic acid, and it's amazing. And also, in addition to killing like the bad bacteria of the plant itself, it also actually kills the bad bacteria in your stomach, these lacto-fermented foods. And in addition to that, it creates good, healthy bacteria, a healthy flora that you need, because as many of us know, depending on what like system you study, whether it's Chinese or Indian, Ayurveda, or just like the GAPS diet with Natasha Campbell, you'll know that at least as much as 90% of our immune system is in our gut. So it's really important to have healthy gut bacteria. And so this helps to do that. And it also helps to do it even more than probiotic pills. Because the thing about probiotic pills is that, according to Sally Fallon, the woman who started the Wesley Price Foundation, the thing about the lacto-fermented foods is that in a tablespoon of lacto-fermented foods, you have more good bacteria than you'll have in a whole jar of probiotic pills. So it's amazing for that reason. So this is also really good because it has enzymes. It's teeming with enzymes, and what that helps, like Lev said, it helps to digest your food. So this is already it's practically pre-digested because of the fermentation process. But when you eat it with other foods, it also helps you to digest those foods as well, especially meats and fats. It helps you to digest them, and it's an amazing condiment for your food. The thing is though, lacto-fermented foods are a condiment. If we go back to us talking about how lactic acid, it kills the putrefying bacteria, the bacteria that's going bad, and it also kills it within your stomach. Well, when it does that, all the toxins that you were holding in with those bacteria, now they start flushing through your system. And when something flushes through your system to get out of your system, it's going to create certain effects. And those effects are they may cause reactions in your body. So you really want to start off slow, especially if you've never had authentically lacto-fermented vegetables or fruit, and I'll go into what that means. But yeah, you definitely want to start off slow, like with a tablespoon or even a teaspoon, and then when you see what your reaction is, like if you start having what Natasha Campbell calls a die-off effect, if you start having that, then you want to slow. If you can handle what you're experiencing, aching joints, just like any issue you've had kind of amplified for a couple of days, if you can handle that, then keep the level or the amount of the lacto-fermented food that you're taking, keep it at that rate until the die-off goes away. If it's too much to handle, stop whatever you're doing and wait a couple of days without eating any more lacto-fermented food until the die-off goes away. And then from there, start much more slowly. Maybe even start with just getting the liquid of the sauerkraut or whatever lacto-fermented food you're eating. When you're starting to feel like you can manage it, the die-off is starting to kind of slow down, then you would start to try maybe one piece of cabbage or a couple of pieces of the fermented cabbage. But you definitely want to take it really slowly. And some people say at the most all you really need, depending on what you're doing this for, if you're just trying to have a constant thing that you eat with every meal, a little condiment that you eat with every meal, like many cultures do all throughout the world, you only really need a tablespoon, they're saying. Sally Fallon is saying. So it just depends on what you're doing it for, but it's definitely just something valuable to have with every meal. Like you can have sauerkraut and pickles with savory meals, you can have the chutneys, the fruit chutneys, or the there's something we have in American culture.
Relish?
Yeah, the relishes, the corn relishes and things like that. Like you can have sweet lacto-fermented dishes and salty lacto-fermented dishes. And so you can really have them with every meal. You can even have kombuchas, and like we were talking about the beers and the wines. There's a way to get something lacto-fermented every meal. And you can make it like we're making it, which is super inexpensive to do.
A lot of the beers that you're going to be drinking and wine, not all of those will be lacto-fermented. You want the wild fermented things. The things that you have to add, yeast, that's not lacto-fermentation.
Right, and so same thing with food. I was going to say, you can make it, but you can also buy it. But like he was saying, when you buy it, it's important to know when you're actually getting lacto-fermented foods. Because of the industrialization of the society, everything has been made to be the fastest and the cheapest that it can be. So with lacto-fermentation, there's a little bit of a variable with it. The salt, some people say it's a little bit easier to do with whey, but we haven't experienced that yet. But what we do know is regardless of how you do it, there's going to be a variable. And so the way that the industrial, or companies deal with that is they use vinegar instead of actually letting it ferment naturally wild with salt. And that doesn't have the same benefits that this does. That's just fermentation. I don't think they even call it lacto-fermentation. And so the way that you know if you're actually getting a lacto-fermented product is when you go into the grocery store and you go to the shelves and you look, the stuff that's on the shelf and not in the refrigerator section is almost always vinegar. And you can check the ingredients, but pretty sure that's almost always going to be vinegar. When you find various fermented foods in the cold section, it's more likely that it'll be vinegar, but you still want to be cautious with that because it's possible that it still has, it's more likely that it'll be salt. But you still want to be cautious with that because it's still possible that it'll have vinegar or some other ingredient that you really don't want, like sugar or even the salt. Like, even though you can use whatever salt, like we really recommend you using sea salt. We're using pink Himalayan sea salt, but you can use any type of sea salt you want. It's just you want to use unrefined, unprocessed salt. You also want to use organic vegetables. You can't guarantee that with the stuff you're going to find in the store most of the times either. And you want to use filtered water or spring water. So all of these elements you can control when you make it yourself, but when you buy it, it's a little bit hard to find all of those elements in one product. So I definitely recommend just making it yourself. It's super simple. And the process is really simple. It's just you get these vegetables, you wash them, you chop them up depending on how you want to chop them up. You put them in the jar. Sometimes you massage them first, sometimes you put them in the jar and then just push them down. And then you cover them up tightly, put them somewhere that's kind of cool and dark, that's like 73 or something degrees all the time. And then after a few days, when depending on the recipe, depending on what you're using, that's why you want to look up recipes. You can look up ours again, or on Patreon, or you can look up recipes online. But depending on what you want to do when they're ready, according to that recipe, then you put it, in a root cellar. If you don't have a root cellar, which is like a refrigerator underground, which is something I've always wanted, which is something I'm definitely going to get. We're going to have a root cellar one day. But if that doesn't work, then...
We'll get you a root cellar one day, baby.
Thank you, baby.
Make you in my bare hands.
Okay. If you don't have a root cellar, then you can, maybe use your wine cellar if you have one of those because you're rich like that. If you don't have a wine cellar, then you can just use like the top shelf of your refrigerator. Or you can have, if you have a small refrigerator that you're not using, you can use that and just keep it on the warm setting. So there's options for this. But regardless, it's definitely much cheaper. And make sure you look at the recipe because you want to know, like the first time I did this, I used way too much salt. So like I'm actually following a recipe this time to like make sure that I don't over salt things. And
I even saw this one video on Lacto-Fermentation by Sander Katz, who wrote the book Wild Fermentation. He barely salts, and he'll taste it as he goes to get the correct salt amount. For him, it's like use a little bit of starch to kind of get the cabbage to sweat a little bit, and it helps to break down and get the juices out, but honestly, you don't need much.
Yeah, it really breaks out really easily.
And the way he, describes, he says to press into the jar until it's submerged in the juices.
Yeah,
and you're not adding any juices.
Yeah, usually people they use some kind of meat pounder or some kind of like pounder. Don't put too much in it, please. Leave it kind of.
It's gonna have that much more.
Usually you press it with this kind of thing, and you just press it down, and you just try to keep it below. That's enough.
A little more.
You just try to keep it below the like its own liquid level. So yeah, so what was really interesting about this was when I went to go look up the research that I was going to do for this video, and I went into the library, and I spoke to the librarian and asked him where this book Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon would be. he laughed and he was like, oh, that's in the business, science, and technology section after he looked it up. And he was like, that's weird. And I was like sitting there all philosophical, like, oh, no, that makes a lot of sense because this is like a science. And
It's bubbling.
oh, wow.
It's already fermenting. Y'all.
It's bubbling.
It's bubbling.
That's so cool. So
Sorry to interrupt you there.
it's okay. So he was just like all huff and puffing, like, I don't know if cooking is a science, if cooking is a technology. And I was, because he probably doesn't cook, so he probably doesn't even know. But I was just like thinking like how it really is. Like cooking itself, of course, is a technology, it's a science. But even beyond that, fermentation specifically is really referred to as an alchemical process by a lot of different people because it really does transform the vegetables. Another benefit that I forgot to mention is that when you ferment vegetables, it amplifies the amount of vitamins that are in them. So whereas like cabbage by itself, as an example, has like a certain amount of vitamin C, but when you ferment it, it has like 20 times that. So people that like were on or are on ships and stuff like that, they would take these barrels of sauerkraut with them and they would be able to prevent things like scurvy because of them understanding how much more effective it is than just taking a pill or taking a pill of vitamin C or something like that. So lacto-fermentation, it's a process that we're getting into because, like I said in the last video, we're really engaging, because of this baby, because of our lives, we're really engaging the traditional wisdom of our wellness-oriented ancestors and all of the indigenous people throughout the world back then and today who have effectively just figured out this experiment of life and know what you need to do to be healthy, to bring in healthy children, to live and have healthy teeth and strong bone structures. These cultures exist and have existed and exist all throughout the world. And one of the things that most of them always have in common is that they have some kind of lacto-fermented thing at almost every meal, even if it's just yogurt or cheese. So thanks for watching, and we hope that you're enjoying learning this as much as we are. And let us know if you try something. Let us know if you try a lacto-fermented experiment, or if you've been lacto-fermenting for many years and you have a tip or something like that. Anyway, just give us a comment.
We're new at this, we're learning as we go.
Indeed.
And we're sharing with you every step of the way.
Yeah, like if you remember one of our earlier videos, Lev was eating something that we fermented. And this was before we knew about lacto-fermentation, we just knew about fermentation. So we actually fermented it in the way that we were taught at that point, which was with vinegar. And we made...
It's really not fermented because the vinegar's already fermented. It's really just...
soaking.
Yeah, it's marinating.
It's marinating it. And so we did a fruit version of it, which, Sally Fallon would say just use... I'm not sure she uses any salt, but I know she uses whey for the fruit ones. Because I think just because you can't really pound the fruit or something. Actually, no, you can pound chutney. I'm not sure why she uses whey. But regardless... she definitely says don't use vinegar. So we use vinegar with like watermelon rinds or something like that. And Love's reaction was so funny. Matter of fact, I'll play that clip.
Why you gotta remind
So
they can find it if they really want to watch that.
Funny. So we're learning as we go, and we just hope that you engage some of this with us if we tell you why we're doing as much as we can, and if you're enjoying what we're sharing, then like our videos, subscribe to our videos. We have a new video up every Friday, every Thursday for our patrons, starting at as low as $1 a month. And give us a comment, engage the discussion. How are you supporting the health of your integral being? How are you supporting your symbiotically abundant resilience? How are you supporting your intercultural connection? Let us know. All right, y'all. Have a great rest of your day. Peace.
Peace. If you like this video...
I already did that, Larry.
You did?
Yes.
Oh, you said subscribe.
Yeah, you did all those things.
Oh, I'm in my world here.